everybody for tuning in. I'm Robert Gaines, your host here on the Free Time Mastermind Podcast. I have with me Phil Ransom, who is an author, a speaker, a keynote speaker, and also a workshop speaker, which I hope to get more information about that because he's got a lot of experience in that regard. Good morning, Phil. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. It's a delight, Robert.
It's my pleasure. And you're also a Podmatch alumnus, so shout out to Alex Sanfilippo and all the great people
Yes.
there. What a wonderful, ethical organization they are. And the more I learn about them, the more I like them, which is usually the opposite when I do research on companies. But they're really good people. Which brings up a question. So when I do research for these episodes, I start thinking about these big themes. And when you talk about legacy, the word that kept going through my mind this morning is, obviously the principles that are immutable through time that they were valid 100 years ago, they'll be valid 100 years from now. And how legacy, we don't hear this as much. Maybe we heard this more 30, 40 years ago, but behaving in a way not to shame the family name. And you don't hear that anymore, but
No.
that was a barometer in the 1970s.
It could be because somebody already has shamed the family name. I don't know. But you're exactly right. It's not as prevalent a theme as it used to be.
Well, I was trying to think of a synonym or a related concept to legacy that might put it in a different context for people. And the word that came to me, and I want you to react to this, stewardship of
Oh,
the
exactly.
family name, of the relationships we have, and of the land. So if you don't mind, give me your hot take on that.
Oh, it is. And I talk about it in the book Influenced, where there are several different kinds of gratitude, one of which is the least comfortable, is I have these blessings, I have this stuff, and I could never pay anybody back for that. That's an indebted sort of gratitude. It's uncomfortable. And then you can move from that into a sense where you're grateful. You look at yourself in the mirror in the morning, you say, I'm so blessed. I don't know what to do with it, but I'm blessed. What I'd like to see people get to and help them get there is, look what I can give to other people because of how I have been given to. And that's the stewardship principle. I make the point in chapter 4 that a person who's thinking about scarcity is going to clutch things tightly like this. But a person who's a steward of gratitude is going to be saying, this has given to me, and I can relay that to this person. Let me invest a little bit here, a little bit here. And a steward does exactly that. He maintains, or she maintains, what they've been given, usually for the good of another.
I think people struggle with gratitude, especially in some of the hardest moments of their life.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people are so strafed, either, and it could be from the home. They don't get a great break there. They didn't get a great start. Latchkey kids, single parent home.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get a lot of love. They don't feel like there's a hand up. And I see those people go, get older and go out into the world, and they don't network and they don't have fellowship. So that's the second word I was thinking was fellowship. So they don't seek fellowship, and they're ungrateful because, and potentially rightly so, in their worldview, in that tiny world that they've lived in, that they've not expanded on, they feel abandoned. And it's very hard to have gratitude when you're feeling a sense of an abandonment. So do you think fellowship is a great cure for that?
It's a big part of it, yes. It's real easy when you're feeling endangered or you're feeling like you're at risk. The last thing you want to do is venture out and get hurt again. But if you do venture out a little bit and somebody happens to encourage you or happens to bless you, then you can kind of change that trajectory. And the more little successes, if I can use that word, where you get, this is, think of a kid who's learning to play basketball. How many times does he shoot or she shoot before he finally goes in? But then there's a second one and a third one and 5 or 10. And before long, you can't keep the kid off the driveway because that's all they want to do. And it kind of works that same way. If if you've got good friends that you're working with and you go do things together, that camaraderie, that fellowship reinforces the good things you're trying to do. So yeah, fellowship fits. Absolutely.
And that's a good comparison that reminds me of, I talk to people about playing guitar. I never developed a good skill at guitar because the first guitar anybody gave me was when I was 10, and they gave me a big gospel guitar, which is the largest body acoustic guitar
Absolutely.
they made. And I was like,
How do I
you know,
get around this thing?
it was a very unpleasant experience, and then never picked it up again until years later. And then now I realize they have small scale guitar. There's the much easier path. But either way, whether you're playing the gospel guitar or the tiny guitar that's a little bit better fit for you, there's a point of practice where the tips of your fingers are going to start to hurt, and a lot of people stop right there and they never go past that. Most podcasters, they shoot for, what do they make, barely make four. By the fourth episode it's eliminated, I don't know, a vast number of podcasters. I mean, they don't make it even to number 5.
Wasn't what I thought it would be.
Yeah, marriages don't make it to 5 years. I mean, so but the thing is, you have to get past, the fingertips will harden. The marriage, if you continue working, gets better. Um, and would you agree that consistency is a big, just keep chipping away, keep consistent, and keep learning?
Yes, yes. And I think one of the things that helps with that is if you're making financial investments, you have a quarterly report that you can go see how your return, the kind of return you're getting on your investment. That doesn't work that same way when you're working with people, because there's a long delay sometimes between when you give someone an opportunity, when you open a door for them, when you speak, you speak their name in a room and they're not there. Yeah, I think she's ready for it. I think we ought to. And they get the position and they move ahead. They don't even know until much later that that happened. So you have to be generous in a way, open-handed generous. So I'm just going to do this because I can, not because I want anything in return, because I remember who put something into my life. And how long was it before I thought to write him a note, call him on the phone, say, hey, thanks, I was thinking about you. So you don't get those monthly or quarterly reports with this kind of giving, with this kind of investing, I call it. It's just you're investing your influence in somebody, knowing that it might be years before you find out. And there's some cool stories in the book how that actually happened. Some of mine.
And that lands because thankfully I was able to reach out to some of the most influential mentors that I had once I got out of that forest of, because that ingratitude kid, that was me. By the way, I was describing, and a lot of other people. I mean, I was a latchkey kid, but I had both parents, but they worked, they weren't in the house. So I went into the world without a lot of skills that you need to navigate in the world. And, but they loved me by making sure there was food in the refrigerator. So, it wasn't like a bad environment. I just missed out on a lot of information. And there were some key people that came along, and I think about those moments, and when those mentors came into my life, it was sometimes just a few minutes. It was a phrase, and they might not have known. So I went through this probably in my 30s where I started doing a letter writing campaign, letting people know. And one of them was a teacher, and those teachers love to hear, and I said, I said, Joe Heitzman, because he was one of my high school teachers. I said, I know you don't remember me because I was a very not memorable kid in school. I was trying to stay out of trouble. So I stayed kind of quiet when the teachers weren't around. But he was an amazing guy. And he was the first and probably maybe one of the only people to tell the students to challenge authority and ask questions. So I grew up because I felt that way anyway. I had a lot of doubt about these people that were giving instructions to me that didn't sound quite right. And then I went in the military, and we had good leaders, and then we had some people that just made stuff up as they went along. And so my discernment got very, very strong, and he gave me the permission to be critical when a supposed authority says something. So just because somebody has a badge or they have the funny hat on, or, you can probe that. And then later I became a fraud investigator. So I really got down to, I don't care if you got PhD behind your name. If you committed fraud, you're going to have some problems. So I wanted to be on the good side of that quotient and maybe, work against some of that negativity. So ultimately, when people have gratitude in their life, the people that I know that are grateful, they're very happy people. and they tend to live a long time. I worked in the hospital, and almost all the people that came in that were 70, but they looked like they were 40.
Hmm.
They were all bright, happy, maybe not didn't exercise every day, maybe didn't have a great diet, but they had an awesome positive mental attitude. How much of that do you think plays into that as far as mindset?
I think it really does. And the one of the things that helps a lot when you're trying to get started is this is a series of decisions. Anything that you try to improve is a series of decisions. Whether it's I'm going to smile at the mailman if we cross paths. I'm not just going to assume that they're doing their thing, I'm doing mine. Speak to the cashier in a store. You don't have to be a smart aleck. You just have to show interest in the person, and that sort of thing. The more you do that, the easier it becomes because the people who receive that kind of, oh, hi, they really don't react in a negative way. They react positively, and that helps. So then you can see. And then when you hear later, a day or two later, I was feeling kind of down Thursday, and your words just made a difference. Thanks. That's a check mark in the box. And you say, okay, this is worth doing again because that made a difference for them. That was valuable. And you get to doing it, and before long, you're taking the training wheels off your little encourager bike and you're doing more. And it just, after a while, it's something that you just really, really enjoy doing.
And you don't have to pay somebody's rent, Phil. It's you're spreading seeds. Sometimes they fall and follow ground, and sometimes they take root. And I think early on, because I didn't have great social dynamics, I was probably over investing in some relationships. And I realize now, like, look at the person at the park that has all the pigeons around them. They don't run up and throw a loaf of bread. They just toss a little bit, and the birds get a little curious, and they come in. And marketing is the same way. Selling yourself,
Yep.
it's the same way. You can't be a fire hose of information. You've got to
Yep.
give them a little bit, and if they receive the
Mhm.
message, you let them a little further into the circle. I don't think a lot of people don't understand that, because
Right.
I certainly didn't. Now, when authors come on, and I watch a lot of podcasts to know what to do and what not to do, they
Hmm.
always ask, what made you think of the idea to write your book? Everybody gets asked that. But what I want to ask you is, when you were writing the book, what was that passage that when you wrote it down and you were like, you know what? I've got something here. Now I'm excited. I feel like I can
Yes.
really put my name on this and go on podcasts and talk about it. So I know there's a section in there.
There is, and I'll try to give you the short version. We lived for a time in a small town in Wisconsin that butted up against a historic site, an estate for Alfred Linfontaine, Broadway greats in the 20s and 30s. And to venture out a little bit, decided to take the training and be a docent there. So I would have 2 hours with 10 people walking through the buildings, telling all the stories, et cetera, et cetera. And we finished always in the living room of the original cottage. And the idea came to me one day. We're going back in a minute from 1947, 8, 9, back to the 2000s. One of the things you could do, talking to the guests, would be if when you get back there, if you called somebody, if you wrote a thank you note saying, I was just thinking about you. I was at 10 Chimneys and you came to mind, and I just want to say thank you for, yeah, ABCD. Well, I lived close enough, I was able to walk to and from. And on the walk home one day, the idea came, there's someone who influenced you big time when you were in high school, and you should say thanks. So I went through this litany of events to write him a letter, made it big print, recounted the stories, and sent it off to the band director. There was a classmate of mine when we were in high school, so he helped me find him. Sent the letter off. Okay, got that done. A few weeks later, I got a pink envelope with feminine handwriting from that address. And I thought, oh no, I missed him. And she said, I just want to tell you, Dale really appreciated your letter. You remembered some things he had forgotten. We've shared it with family and friends. He says he's going to answer your letter himself, but I don't know. He's the same absent-minded professor we both knew. So, but I knew that made a difference. And that was that big, step forward. And I began to write others, put them in a 3-ring binder. I was going to do an anthology of thank yous type thing. And then in the fall of last year, it occurred to me that the best use of those stories would be to reinforce telling somebody how to get from, I never even thought about that, to, you know what, it's not expensive. I'm going to live that way. So I found a coach, a pair of writing coaches, and that had been accumulating for 22 years, sitting on a binder on my shelf all that time. 6 weeks later, this book came out, and it was
6 weeks.
6 weeks. It was like, run for it, get it down on paper, streamline it. The hardest part was deciding what stories not to tell, because I love to tell stories. But this one helps. This one helps. This one helps. And then when I get a little further into the book, I pick some historic stories to drop in to broaden it a little bit. One of my favorites is of Carol Burnett. You probably have heard that. She grew up on the West Coast.
Legend.
She was struggling. But somebody noticed her, believed in her, gave her $1,000 interest-free loan so that she could move to New York. We will remain nameless. If you become successful, you can pay it back then, and it would be great if you could do that for other people, which she did all the way around. And then in her circles, enter Lucille Ball, and you just, compounded exponentially. That kind of story to say, yes, but nobody knows when they're doing it every day to the best of their ability what's going to happen, who might encourage, or who you might do that for somebody else. So it was a case of it's time. My coaches asked me as we were interviewing, they said, Phil, you know a lot about what you're trying to do here. Why do you need us? And my answer was, because if I don't work with somebody who holds me to it, who helps me over the tough spots, that binder is going to be sitting in that shelf 10 years from now. So I need you to, that's how it happened.
That's the beautiful accountability of a mastermind group. And of course, we're the free time mastermind. The free time, because most entrepreneurs I know, they're too busy. They're not
free time. What's that?
Yeah, I haven't seen my kid. The kid. Dad comes home and the kid's like, "Mom, who is that stranger in the house?" Because dad's always out working. Or
he's a good guy. I let him in.
Yeah, we'll let him in this time. But it goes to the power of, so the big thing about mastermind groups, I'd say the number one thing about it is the accountability. And of course, that's what you were getting from the coaches. That's what you need. Hey, hold me to the fire. For some people, it's, boots on the ground as skin in the game. In other words, if somebody plunks down, because there's many different ways to publish a book. There's many different ways to begin. I know people that initially just handed somebody $15,000 and there was a ghostwriter, and and you can spend way more than that. 15 grand is really in the literary world, that's really not a lot of money. But for the fledgling writers out there, what did you learn through the writing process that if anybody also has a story inside of them, they want to get it out like you did, what would you tell them?
Two things come to mind. One is, don't overlook all that you have learned already. Don't assume that you're starting at square one, because you are not. You have learned a lot. Bring that to the table, bring that to the desk, and enhance it, grow it. And then the second thing is, don't get hung up on perfectionism. If this thing has got to be perfect, you'll never publish it. And I have some projects they just never got finished. And the reasons for the perfectionism varied. But when you say, I'm going to produce excellence, and I'm not going to apologize for the next few mistakes. Let me read for you a sentence from the second page of my book. All right. This is on the copyright page. Near the bottom, it says, if you find any typographical errors in this book, they're there for a reason. Some people love looking for them, and we strive to please as many people as possible.
I
Okay.
love it. I
It just,
love it.
and I sometimes say with circle that, the Amish folks are known for having one imperfection in every project that they do, just as a way of saying, I am human, I am fallible, I am okay. And I then say, I don't have to worry about doing those on purpose. They're always there. So, but don't, perfectionism will stall you out every time. It will delay, delay, delay. I had one friend years ago said, if you were compare what I have on my blog, he was a blog writer at the time, 5 or 6 years ago to what I wrote a couple of weeks ago, you will see a vast improvement. And guess what? You should, because we keep growing, we keep developing. So,
If they seek it, it'll happen.
well,
There's a
yes,
lot of
yeah,
people that are, really comfortable in where they are. And that's what the books are for. I think
hmm
that the lessons are in the books. I'm a big fan of reading. I go through, I know I keep mentioning it on the channel, but I have an Audible account because I really love audiobooks.
hmm
And this current account, I have 444 titles on there. So I eat audiobooks for breakfast. I think
yeah,
it's fantastic because
yeah.
it's very humbling too, Phil, because I don't have all the answers. I'll never have all the answers. Um, I'm gravitating, hopefully we all are just gravitating towards some better version of ourselves. I hope I look back at my videos in 2026 and
hmm
laugh 10 years from now and think,
Yep.
oh, I thought I was okay as an interviewer then, but I've gravitated every aspect of my life better and
And you
stronger.
were
And
then. That's the
that's
key.
that's
I
right.
was
And
that was my best. I had a choir director one time who looked at us and he said, "All I'm asking for is the best that you have right now."
I
And
love it.
that's a philosophical pillar that just latched in. Did he know that he was affecting a 17-year-old? No, but he did, and we snag those and we take them with us.
That's right. That seed germinated.
Uh-huh.
It and in your mind now, the other kids they might have said, "Oh, when's recess? What's next? Where's the sandwich? But
Uh-huh.
boom, it hits you right between the ears. Now, what I like is you also have some productivity tools. I often say
Yeah,
if it's got to be measured, it's got to be accountable. Was listening to Joe Polish's book this morning. What's in it for them? It's probably the fifth or sixth time I've listened to the audiobook. Um, I think it's the modern version of How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think it's much more
okay.
relevant to 2026. And Joe Polish, although he's not a household name, they call him the most connected man in the world. I mean, he
Okay.
could get pretty much anybody on the phone. And um, he talks a lot about gratitude. He recovered from drug addiction, and he says if you run into that person that you haven't seen in forever and you say, let's get lunch, he goes, don't do that. He goes, get your phone out and set that appointment right then and there of when
Exactly.
if he says, otherwise don't say it. He goes, don't say those empty words. And I don't like those, what do we call them? The words that we just say, like everything happens for a reason. You'll never hear me say that. If
No.
I don't have platitudes, if I don't have something
Mhm.
valuable to contribute that's actionable, I worked in an emergency room. I saw just about everything that could happen to a person, and you have to be very cautious with your words in those moments. So I always think if I wouldn't say it in an emergency situation, I'm not going to say it casually in a
Oh,
social
that's a
situation.
good criteria. You bet. You
Yeah,
bet.
yeah, yeah. Because you never know what somebody's really going through, and it might be
hmm
a casual passerby on the street, and somebody could be really going through it. So I'm
Yeah.
a um, what's the word? A curator. Not
Good
always. I
word.
try to be cautious with my
Well,
words,
yeah.
but I try to curate. But you've got this great productivity tool. It's the 1440 tracker. It's at
Yes.
1440tracker.com. Tell us about that.
That is where I'm offering people is a full sheet version of what I use in half sheet form all the time. I have a couple of half-size binders, and what this tracker is I'm a believer in tell yourself what you need to do once, and then let that tool tell you what to do. So I have this thing set up so I don't have to write in the day, date, year. I just check mark, check mark, check mark. And then there are three top priorities. I list those for today, but I listed them last night. The reason I listed them last night is so that my subconscious can work third shift if it decides to, and do some of those kinds of things. And then they're structured to take 15 minutes maybe of a day. The reason for the 1440 is that's the number of minutes that each of us get in the way of an auto deposit. When it changes from yesterday to today, we get a deposit of 1440 minutes. How am I going to invest that? And then this sheet, very simple, just jots and checks and room for a couple of notes to remind myself, did I write a note today? Was it to encourage? Was it to connect? Just one. All right. If I'm on, did I make a call today? Same kind of a thing. Was it to encourage somebody? Was it connect? I'm not setting myself up for another half-time job. I'm just investing these. I'm not a very good mathematician. I like to say I'm a musician, and we are accustomed to counting to 4 and starting over. But if I do the math, 1% of 1440 is about a quarter of an hour. I can invest that much every day.
And it sounds like it's a conglomeration of a lot of great things. There's a little bit of journaling. There's a little bit of, it's tapping into a couple of powerful productivity tools all at one time.
Off on the right side is these routines were effective today. Morning routine, workday startup, workday close down, evening routine. That assumes, and in the groups that I lead, that we talk about those. If you stack habits in a certain order, you have a routine. So if I'm developing habits in my life, they become a routine. So it's just a place for a check mark. I remember what it is. I don't have to read it again. I just, did it work? Did it work? Oh, that one didn't. That's okay. And then at the bottom are a few lines. Today's optimistic, promising, grateful moments, where you just capture those, and there's not a lot of room to write. So you're just capturing the highlights of that sort of thing. And then you finish that, and it says, turn to tomorrow's and write your top 3 priorities for tomorrow.
I think that's fantastic.
So what I've done is, excuse me, I make that available to people. If you just go to 1440tracker.com.
And we have that in the comments already for the folks watching.
It'll go to you with a mail, and there's a nurturing sequence that follows. Not going to lie, it's there. But part of what I do in that sequence is teach people how to use certain aspects of it. One of them, it's just a simple little box. Integrated faith. +5 to -1. How did I do today?
A grading system. I love it.
There's so much there. If you're a person of faith, how did I do with that? Did I lose it? Did I give myself a bad grade today? But guess what? Tomorrow's a new class. So that it just reminds us of what we think is important. And then the whole intent was, after a person uses that, I think there's room on what they get to print like 50 of them. By the time they get to the end of that, they're going to want to customize their own.
That's right. That makes a lot of sense.
But they know what's important and how to do that. And if they want, I'll send them mine, in an editable format, not a PDF, so that they can mess it up, put their own tracker top, their own header on it, pick their own colors, whatever.
And this great book, Influence, can they purchase it through there, or do they go to Amazon for that?
Amazon is the best place to get it. Yeah. Yep. If I'm in the room, there's probably 3 or 4 in the van, but Amazon's probably the best.
Okay. If you don't mind, I'll put that link in the description too.
That would be sweet.
I wanted to put the tracker in there. Now, as far as the people that are coming to the 1440tracker.com, it's, especially when it comes to spiritual matters, it's hard to talk about demographic. It's hard to talk about customer avatar, because you're not selling Pepsi, let's be honest. Right. But it's still a reality. So who is your dream client? Who are you really trying to reach, that when you meet this type of person, either age, demographic, that you feel like you can really move the needle and make a change in their life? Yeah.
Those are people. There's a book on my shelf back here by Bob Buford called Halftime, where he describes how usually men in our mid 40s, we start to wonder about, I've arrived at this, I've arrived at this, I've got the car I want, my wife has a car that's pretty close to what she wants. We're thinking about a cabin, all of that kind of stuff, but there's still something more. And I make the point in the book, you don't have to wait till your mid 40s to identify those things. In looking back, I recognized that kind of thinking when I was in my mid 20s, which set me up for some really good stuff along the way. I am hoping to talk to people who say, I want the conversation after my funeral dinner. I'm not going to be there, but I want the conversation to be about and by people that I helped, people that I influenced, and for them to be able to rehearse, there was this, and then hopefully the conversation will spin and they'll start talking about things that they have done for each other, you know. And Chris might say to Karen, hey, 3 years ago, and she smiles and says, I had no idea. And he goes, I just want to say thank you. And that whole thing ramps up. And that's, so people who are doing a pretty good job of what they're doing already, but they know there's something that's longer lasting that's going to make a big difference. And
That's right. Once the bills are paid and once the wolf is away from the door, we're working up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And at the top of the pyramid is self-actualization and fulfillment. And for some, it's legacy. It's their, not just their own legacy, but the legacy that they have kids. They may have grandchildren. And one thing that I talk about pretty frequently, particularly in multi-generational businesses, your father can't teach you what he didn't know. And you have to fill in those gaps.
right.
That's your journey to learn that, and then pass on everything you have to your children. And the desire of all parents is that their kids not make the same mistakes that they
Right.
did.
Right.
And
I tell
go ahead.
myself frequently, everything I know, I have learned from somebody. It's my responsibility to add to it before I pass it along. But I need to pass it on.
I think a good life involves giving a lot of praise to those who influenced you,
Mhm.
um, and being respectful to your peers, the people at the same level, and then a conscious effort trying to uplift the people who are a little further behind you on the path. And that could be people younger, spiritually younger financially, or just younger as far as the calendar is concerned.
Mhm.
Do you think that's a pretty good formula for success?
Absolutely. You remember the story in the New Testament that Jesus told about the one servant was given 5 talents, one was given 2, one was given 1. Okay. And
If you give me the story name, I might.
it's a story. It's the parable of the talents. He was going away and he gave 5 talents to one servant, a measure of money, 2 to another one, and 1 to another. And when he came back, the one that he gave 5 to had doubled it. The one who he gave 2 to had doubled it. The one he gave 1 little bag of money to took it out in the field and buried it because he was afraid of the master. I make the point in the book, the failure was not in the finances. The failure was in the relationship to the person who had trusted that to them. Fear did nothing. It cost him even more. But the guy who had 2 and doubled it was just as successful as the guy who had. So what we do with what we're given, that stewardship, to come clear back and around to that, that's really, really key. And if we do it because we love it, because we love the one we're serving, even better, and who
And
knows
people
what
are,
good we might do.
and some people are afraid to be generous, but then again, to go back to another principle, the law of the harvest, you give and you give and you give, and it's hard to quantify the blessings that'll come. They won't come as fast as you expect, and you shouldn't expect them at all. But if you pour out, if you're a river to people, it will come back. It's the nature of things. It's that's not even debate. They can't debate that. It is the way things are. If you're a river to people, there will be things flow back. It might not be as strong or as fast or as quick as some people may want, but reciprocity.
It comes to me and I share it with. That's the river picture. Works really, really well.
Well, thank you so much, Phil. Like I said, I knew
This
the
has
30
been
minutes would
great.
go. I really appreciate it. And thank you for giving us the gift of your time. Anything you wish I had asked? Final thoughts.
No, no, we're good. Just if they get into the book, I will say the book has in it, it's 6 chapters. I wrote it in such a way that a person could get through it in less than a week if they spend some time with it in the evenings. There's a lab section, a page and a half, where people can think. And for those who want scriptural footings, those are there. But
I'm pulling
it's
that up now while we're on the
okay.
line. I'm going to I'm pulling it up on Amazon. I'm going to drop it in the chat, and then also
Thank you. Appreciate that.
no problem. We'll drop it in the chat, and then I'll also put it in the sorry, I'm the world's worst multitasker. That's why I suddenly started talking at
You
half
know
speed.
what?
You see,
While you're doing that, there is no such thing as multitasking.
not for
I
me.
say
That's
I
right.
have a picture of a boat sitting on a glassy lake. So do not multitask. The best I can possibly do is rapid sequential monotasking, and I don't even do that very well.
Love it. A kindred spirit. Well, thank you so much, Phil. We'll end the
Well,
stream. We'll
thank you.
continue on Zoom. Thank you to
Okay,
everybody.
thanks.
There we go. Okay, so we're good on YouTube.